Hello, my name is Greensville and welcome to Rank 4 Guide for Japan. This is the start of the Cold War era for the Japanese tech tree and where Heat FS starts to be used consistently, making armor thickness a non-factor in your survival. The first tank in this guide is the M42 AA tank. Based on the chassis the M41, this is an improved version of the M19A1. This 6-crew tank has 2 in the front and 4 in the open turret. The gun has been moved to the middle of the tank, with the engine being moved to the back. This is also the first tank Japan gets with NVDs for the driver only. The M42 uses the same twin 40mm Bofors weapon system as the M19A1 with 8 rounds per gun with a total ammo pool of 16 rounds, and is reloaded while firing, allowing it to fire until the gun overheats. It has access to the same rounds as the M19A1 of a FIT round with a max penetration of 3mm at any range with an explosive mass of 63 grams, and an OK APT round with a max penetration of 72mm. The armor is quite thin with 12.7mm of RHA for the whole tank, including the gun shield, and 8mm of RHA for the side and rear of the turret. The M42 is quite fast with a max speed of 72 km per hour and a reverse speed of 19 km per hour, and can get up to 40 km per hour at a decent rate. The method of playing this tank is the same as the M19A1, which is preferring more of a tank hunting role using the APT round. It'll have little trouble penetrating tanks at battle rating 4.7 in the side, but will have some issues penetrating tanks in the side from 5.0 and up. With its speed, it can get to a key location quickly to ambush or flank the enemy. For AA, it suffers the same as the M19A1 with a low volume of fire, but if the FIT round hits an enemy aircraft, it will cripple it or it can take it out. Especially so in battle rating 6.0 and up, since this is the only AA tank for Japan for rank 4 to 5. The downside of this tank is not only the open top, the ammo is stored on the outside of the turret, so a grazing shot to the side could set it off, but being the only AA tank from rank 4 to 5, much past battle rating 5.0, the tank hunting will be limited to light tanks or thin armored MBTs, as thicker armored heavy tanks and medium tanks will start to be at play. The M36B2 is an import tank from America, and even though it has an extended roof cover, it is still an open top tank. It holds 5 crew members and are decently spaced out. It uses a 90mm gun with a large selection of rounds, an OK APBC with a max penetration of 175mm, an OK HE with a max penetration of 13mm at any range with an explosive mass of 925 grams, a good APHE with a max penetration of 185mm, 2 good APCR rounds with a max penetration of 287mm and the other of 291mm. And lastly, a pretty good Heat FS with a max penetration of 305mm at any range. It has a not very good reload time of 9.7 seconds, so taking time to aim is important. Like all American tanks, the armor is good but weird valued. It has 50.8mm of cast armor for the upper and lower front plate, and 107.8mm of cast armor for the transmission cover, 38.1mm of RHA for the front at a constructional angle of 54 degrees, 19.05mm of RHA for the upper side hull at 38 degrees, and 25.4mm of RHA for the lower side hull, 76.2mm of cast armor for the turret mantlet, 31.75mm of RHA for the whole turret, 25.4mm of RHA for the rear ammo housing on the back of the turret, and 6.5mm of RHA for the turret cover. It has an OK max speed of 40 km per hour and a not very good reverse speed of 5 km per hour. The method of playing this tank is to take a mid to long range roll to give a better chance of hitting enemies in the side. And with the Heat FS round, distance is not that big of an issue, and with its -10 degree vertical guidance, hull fighting on gentle hills will allow you to hide your weak hull armor. The downside of this tank is that it's an open top, and with heat being used a lot, in battle rating 6.0 to 6.7, it will affect you in overpressure mechanics, along with aircraft being able to shoot through the top cover, taking your crew out. The M41A1 is an import tank from America and plays just the same as the one in the US tech tree. It is a 4-crew tank with most of the crew packed in the turret. Also being the base model for the M42, it has NVDs for the driver only as well. It uses a long-barreled 76mm gun and has an OK AP AP round with a max penetration of 177mm, a HE round with a max penetration of 12mm at any range with an explosive mass of 662 grams, and an OK APCR round with a max penetration of 205mm, and a pretty good APDS round with a max penetration of 232mm. It has OK armor of 25.4mm of RHA for the upper front plate at 60 degrees, 31.7mm of RHA for the lower front plate at 42 degrees, 19mm of RHA for the top of the hull and side of the hull covering the engine, 25.4mm of RHA for the side of the hull, 31.7mm of cast armor for the turret mantlet, 19mm of RHA for the top of the turret, and 25.4mm of RHA for the sides and rear of the turret. Being what the M42 was based on, it has the same max speed and reverse speed of 72 km per hour and 19 km per hour, and also gets up to 40 km per hour at a decent rate. The method of playing this tank is to take a mid-range roll to scout the enemy for your team, since you can get to key locations quickly, but also so you can hit enemies in the sides or rear, as some of the tanks you will face will not be able to penetrate them in the front very well. The downside of this tank is most of your tank is full of ammo, so if you bring more than what's in the first stage ammo rack, any shot to the front of your hull could hit the ammo and set it off. But also having the ready rack in the turret instead of in the back, a shot to the side of your hull while looking forward or a shot to the front at the driver's side could hit your ammo and set it off. The STA-1 is the first prototype tank Japan was making on the design of the M47 after World War II. This 4-crew MBT has a fair amount of open space, but the crew and the turret are packed together, along with all the ammo stored in the turret. The weapon system is a 90mm gun that has access to the same rounds as the M36B2, an APBC with a max penetration of 175mm, an APHE with a max penetration of 185mm, an HE round with a max penetration of 13mm at any range with an explosive mass of 925 grams, 2 APCR rounds with a max penetration of 287mm and 291mm, and a Heat FS round with a max penetration of 305mm at any range. It has a good max speed of 45 km per hour and a good reverse speed of 17 km per hour, and can get up to 30 km per hour at a decent rate. The armor on this tank is a bit thin, with 45mm of RHA for the upper front plate at 52 degrees, 50mm of RHA for the lower front plate at 47 degrees, 35mm of RHA for the side hull, 30mm of RHA for the extended driver hatch and front engine armor. The turret mantlet goes from 75mm of cast armor to 35mm, with the turret cheeks being 75mm of cast armor, 60mm of cast armor for the side of the turret and commander's hatch, 35mm of cast armor for the rear of the turret, and 12mm of RHA for the top of the hull, and 18mm of cast armor for the top of the turret. The method of playing this tank is to take a mid-range approach, with preferably being a hill fighter so not to expose the thin armor, and to improve deflection of AP, APCR, and APDS rounds hitting the upper front plate and turret mantlet. Also, the STA-1's rounds will have little to no trouble penetrating tanks at battle rating 5.3 to 7.3 in the side, and when you get Heat FS, you'll be able to penetrate any tank as long as they do not have reactive armor or large sections of spaced armor. The downside of the STA-1 is that the armor is quite thin, and with only -10 degrees of vertical guidance, you'll only be able to peek gentle hills. Along with the engine sticking out in the back, you'll only be able to look past about 0 to -1 degrees down while looking behind you, but since the top of the armor is quite thin, enemy aircraft can take you out, and the biggest one being that since the ammo is stored in the turret ring ammo rack and the rear turret ammo rack, if you bring more than 12 rounds, a shot to the side or to the center of the hull, if not taking out your crew, can hit the ammo and set it off, knocking you out. The STA-2 is the second prototype tank Japan made and has some improvements over the first. The turret section of the hull has been raised so the engine doesn't block you as much. The 50 cal mounted to the commander's hatch has been removed, and the tank is now taller. The STA-2 is equipped with the same 90mm gun as the STA-1 and uses the exact same rounds as the STA-1. It also has the exact same max speed and reverse speed of 45 km per hour and 17 km per hour, and also gets up to mid-30 km per hour at a decent rate. The armor is mostly the same as the STA-1, but with some improvements. The upper front plate is now at a constructional angle of 62 degrees. The lower front plate is now at 52 degrees. The front cheek armor has been added of 50mm of RHA at 56 degrees. The driver's hatch has now been angled to 74 degrees. The upper side hull has been extended and made into 30mm of RHA at 42 degrees. And the 35mm of cast armor above the turret mantlet has been extended to the top of the turret. The method of playing this tank is the same as the STA-1, as being a mid-range fighter that benefits from hill fighting to hide the weak hull armor and to improve deflection of AP, APCR, and APDS rounds to the front. Along with having the same rounds, it will have little to no trouble penetrating enemy tanks in the side from a distance, and will also have little to no trouble with the Heat FS round penetrating tanks that do not have reactive armor or large sections of spaced armor. The downside of this tank is also the same as the STA-1. The top armor is still thin, so enemy aircraft can take you out. When peaking hills, if they are too steep, you will expose too much of your tank due to only having a negative 10-degree vertical guidance, and the same major issue of all the ammo being stored in the turret, so any hit to the side or front of the hull could set your ammo off if you have more than 12 rounds in the tank. The Type 75 SPH is a mobile howitzer the game has made into a tank destroyer. It is a late game version of the Ho-Ro due to how it is played. This boxy tank holds 6 crew members, 1 in the front and 5 in the turret, and the first domestic tank to get NVDs for the driver only. It uses a hefty 155mm long barrel gun that has access to an HE round with a max penetration of 61mm at any range with a whopping 9.14 kg explosive mass. A ground proximity fused HEVT round with a max penetration of 61mm at any range and also has a whopping 9.14 kg explosive mass. But the fuse kicks in only after the round has gone 300 meters. And a faster moving HE round with a max penetration of 54mm at any range with an explosive mass of 6.8 kg. The Type 75 SPH has a slow reload rate of 10 seconds for the first stage ammo and an even worse reload rate after the first stage ammo of about 20 seconds, with about 13 seconds per round to refill the first stage ammo rack, and with slow turret rotation of 8.4 degrees a second, taking your time to aim is key. It has an okay max speed of 47 km per hour and a good reverse speed of 19 km per hour, and can get up to 30 km per hour at a decent rate. The Type 75 SPH armor is very thin. The whole tank uses aluminum alloy number 7039. The front, side, rear, and hull is only 30mm, along with the whole turret and top of the hull and turret roof is 25mm. There is a 8mm RHA firewall between the crew compartment and the engine. The method of playing this tank is to take a mid-range to long-range rule to mortar rounds at the enemy. Since the armor is so thin, it will lower the chances of being hit, and it gives a better opportunity to have the HE round laying closer to the top of the enemy hull or turret roof. Since the rounds travel so slow, they will arc more. These rounds will overpressure any tank due to the explosive mass if they hit a weak spot. The downside of this tank is not just the slow reload, but the armor is very thin, so any machine gun fire can take you out, and overpressure mechanics will apply to you even though you are not an open top tank. The STA-3 is the third prototype tank Japan made and has even more improvements over the second tank. The tank as a whole is smaller than the second two, but the 50 cal was re-added, making it even taller than the last two tanks. The commander's cupola sticks out more. The turret is now longer and sits above the engine, allowing you to look behind you better, but still stuck at about -1 degree vertical guidance, looking directly behind you. And the gun takes up even more room in the turret, causing most of the ammo to be moved to the lower hull. The STA-3 uses an improved 90mm gun that uses an auto-loading mechanism to load from the ready rack in the back of the turret. With its improved gun, the STA-3 uses different rounds than the other STA tanks. It has an APBC round with a max penetration of 194mm, an HE round with a max penetration of 13mm at any range with an explosive mass of 925 grams, an APCBC round with a max penetration of 185mm, and a Heat FS round with a max penetration of 320mm at any range. Due to its autoloader, it has a quick reload rate of 6 seconds, but once all the rounds have been spent from the ready rack, you'll have to wait 20 seconds to refill one round into the ready rack and then wait 6 seconds for the round to reload, as the loader is unable to load a round directly into the gun. So be mindful at how many rounds you are sending, or you'll be punished with a 26-second reload time to fire one round. The tank has an okay max speed of 45 km per hour and an okay reverse speed of 8 km per hour, and can get up to low 30 km per hour at a decent rate. The armor is mostly same as the STA2, but with some improvements. The 45mm upper front plate's angle has been reduced to 60 degrees and now goes up to the driver viewport, removing the 30mm RHA plate, as the viewport now sits on top of the hull. The lower front plate's angle has been increased to 54 degrees. The front cheek armor is now 45mm of RHA at 49 degrees. The 30mm extended side hull angle has been reduced to 30 degrees. The turret mantlet is now a solid 125mm of cast armor. The armor above and below the mantlet is now 40mm of cast armor. The turret cheeks and sides is now a gradient from bottom to top of 60mm to 40mm of cast armor. And the commander's cupola has been fully added with 30mm of cast armor. The method of playing this tank is the same as the last STA tanks, in that a mid-range hill fighting role would be preferred, as to hide most of your weak armor, but to also increase deflection of AP, APCR, and APDS rounds hitting the front of your tank. And with its rounds, it should not have much of any trouble penetrating the sides of enemy tanks at the battle rating it will face, and with its improved Heat FS round, it will only have trouble penetrating tanks with reactive armor or large sections of spaced armor. The downside of this tank is that the top of the hull and the turret roof armor is quite thin, so enemy aircraft can take you out, and though most of the rounds sit below the transmission, if you bring more than 31 rounds, the ammo will be stored in the ammo rack attached to the turret ring, and if you bring more than 12 rounds in the autoloader, a low-hitting round to the side of the hull or to the lower front plate can hit one of the ammo racks at the bottom and could set off the ammo, knocking you out. The Type 60 SPRG is an interesting little open-top tank that packs a punch. This tiny tank with its odd design holds 3 crew members. The weapon system is a weird mix of 2 useless 50 cal machine guns that use AI rounds with a max penetration of 7mm used for spotting and marking targets in real life, and 2 106 recoilless rifles that can use a heat round with a max penetration of 433mm at any range, or a Heish round with a max penetration of 152mm at any range. Each rifle tube has 5 rounds it can use, giving a total ammo count of 10 rounds, but has a slow reload rate of 13 seconds, so taking time to aim is key. The turret is fixed to the tank, so it can only look plus or minus 30 degrees horizontally, but has an impressive -20 vertical guidance. The Type 60 SPRG is quite fast, with its max speed of 55 km per hour and very good reverse speed of 24 km per hour, and can get up to 30 km per hour very fast. Being small and fast, this tank's armor is very thin, 16mm of RHA for the upper and lower front plate, with the upper front plate being at 61 degrees. The front armor is 14mm of RHA at 77 degrees. The driver viewport, front protective armor, and turret roof is 30mm of RHA. The front turret shield and rear of the tank and upper side hull is 9mm of RHA. The lower side hull, turret armor, and gunner cupola is 10mm of RHA. The turret side's armor has 15mm of RHA, and the rest of the turret has 6mm of RHA. The method of playing this tank is to either take a close range ambush roll to hit enemy tanks in the side or rear of the turret, or a mid-range hill fighting roll, since the rounds don't lose penetration with distance, and with a -20 degree vertical guidance will allow you to peek kills with only the gun tube sticking out. The downside of this tank is that it's an open top tank, so all overpressure mechanics will apply. The rear and left side of the tank is open, so any round that is shot into the open part can take out your crew. The armor is quite thin, so most machine guns can penetrate your armor, and enemy aircraft can easily take you out. And mostly, you only have 10 rounds total, so if you're not careful, you can run out of ammo quite fast. The last tank is the Type 61 and is the final production model of the STA series tanks, making it the first post-war MBT Japan has made. This tank also has NVDs for the driver only, and is was also the first domestic tank to get smoke grenades for Japan. The Type 61 uses the same 90mm gun as the STA-3, but the autoloader has been removed. It has access to the exact same rounds as the STA-3, and its reload rate is back to the older STA-1 and 2 of 9.7 seconds. It has the same max and reverse speed of the STA-3 of 45 km per hour and 8 km per hour, and can also get up to 30 km per hour at a decent rate. The armor of the Type 61 is the exact same as the STA-3, but with very minor changes. The upper front plate's angle has been increased to 61 degrees, and the lower front plate's angle has been decreased to 53 degrees. And the commander's cupola is now a dome of 31.7mm of cast armor. So the method of playing this tank is the exact same as the other STA series tanks, preferring more of a mid-range hill fighter role to increase deflection of AP, APCR, and APDS rounds, and being at the same battle rating as the STA-3, it will have little to no trouble penetrating tanks in the side at the battle rating it will face, and also having the same heat FS round as the STA-3, it will have little to no trouble penetrating tanks that do not have reactive armor or large sections of spaced armor. The downside of this tank is the same as the other STA series tanks. Now that the autoloader has been removed, more ammo is put in the turret ammo rack, along with increasing the first stage ammo to 22 rounds. So when taking more than 12 rounds into combat will cause ammo to be placed in the turret ring ammo rack, and a shot to the front or side of the tank, if not taking out your crew, could hit the ammo, setting it off and knocking you out. That is all the tanks in rank 4 for Japan. It consisted mostly of prototype MBTs that led up to the production model MBT for Japan. The next video will cover the tanks in rank 5 for Japan. If you liked this video or it was helpful to you, please leave a like. And if you want a more in-depth look at one of these tanks, please let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see the continuation of these guides, please subscribe. Thank you for watching.